Bills Mafia. Tonight on the Air Raid Hour post-game show, we are diving deep into all things Bills Seahawks. We've got the latest injury updates, major takeaways, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is a breakdown you do not want to miss. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome into the Air Raid Hour presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at The Bills Guys. Joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And Dave, already got a super chat rolling in here from Justin Tyndall. Justin, want to thank you so much. Super chat's always appreciated and appreciate you, Justin. He says, I owe you an apology. I wasn't familiar with your game. Shaq meme. Salute to Connor Williams, airmailing a snap from 2nd and goal from the 3, and also stepping on Geno's foot on 4th and goal from the 1. Hats off to you, Connor. We salute you. And hey, us here at the Air Raid Hour, we should be familiar with Connor Williams' game because he's been part of the atrocious Miami offensive line the past couple of seasons. So we know all about Connor Williams' game.
Yeah, so in a way, the Dolphins continue to treat us well in that regard after they also lost yesterday to the Cardinals in a game that they were winning essentially until the very last play of the game. I'm sure where you live, people were quite happy about the way that one turned out.
Yeah,
Trey McBride just abused those guys yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that must have been a nice local mood there for you in Arizona. I'm sure people were happy.
Oh yeah, watched the first game with the in-laws, saw the Arizona Cardinals defeat the Miami Dolphins, and then I got to watch the Buffalo Bills with another impressive 31-10 win over the Seattle Seahawks to improve to 6-2, first place in the AFC East. And as you mentioned, the Miami Dolphins, they lost to the Arizona Cardinals. The Jets, they lost to the New England Patriots. So all three other teams in the AFC East stand with 2 wins currently. The Buffalo Bills have a 4-game lead in the AFC East. The Bills also have road wins over Miami and New York. So they get those 2 teams at home, starting with Miami next week, plus New England twice. And New England came out today, and the reports are after trading Josh Uche, they are down to trade a lot more pieces as well. They are in the selling mood. So the Buffalo Bills are sitting pretty for an AFC crown for a 5th consecutive season.
Yeah, and I wonder about the Patriots. Like, what more can they sell? Because it's not like they're stockpiled with talent outside of very recent draft picks. They're not going to trade any of the 2 receivers they just drafted, I wouldn't imagine. Maybe Hunter Henry becomes a trade chip for somebody. But, yeah, the Jets in utter spiral as well. You see like guys like Mike Greenberg and Rich Eisen going on rants today about the Jets. I've said it on this show multiple times, like the Mike McDaniel shtick with the Dolphins. I never thought it was cool. I never thought he was cool. Like, everyone loves that guy. Like, I always just found it annoying, to be honest. And so it is nice. Now the Bills can't put it in cruise control at this stage, right? They got an important division game that would go a long way. And then they hit a tough stretch of games after they go to Indy after playing Miami for that gauntlet of games where those 4 would be the Chiefs, the Niners, the Rams, and the Lions in that 4-game stretch. So a lot still to be taken care of here, but it is nice to see the Jets and Dolphins both lose yesterday.
Always great to stack wins. I mean, we were an Indy scoop and score getting taken off the board away from being the number 2 team in the AFC currently behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Unfortunately, that play did not stand, and the Houston Texans won. The top storyline from our pregame was Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
And it turns out that all of that sort of stress was for naught, because it turns out Seattle's coaching staff hates the way that this team run blocks so much that they didn't even try to feed Kenneth Walker the ball. And when they did, the Buffalo Bills absolutely shut him down. Let's lead off with that before we get into anything else. The Buffalo Bills took the best player on the Seattle Seahawks and completely shut him down.
They did shut him down, and I obviously I'm not going to take anything away from what the Bills did, but I also have to question a little bit somewhat of the scripted game plan that the Seahawks came out with. First drive, 3 straight passes. Didn't give Kenneth Walker a rush, I think, until their third series, if I'm not mistaken. And the Bills did a good job bottling him down. Now, if you go into this game looking at Bills without Terrell Bernard, their best coverage linebacker, you would think, and without Dwayne Carter, they're kind of up and coming run stuffing DT, that they would work the middle of the field a bit, either through Kenneth Walker running the ball or in the passing game. And they really didn't get him involved running the ball until maybe it was almost too late. And they didn't really use the middle of the field with him in the passing game either. It was mostly on the edges. So the Bills did what they needed to do, but also I think maybe some questionable game planning and play calling by the Seattle Seahawks that left me scratching my head a little bit.
We're going to get into all that and more, but first, a word from our sponsor.
What's up, y'all? Khalil Shakir here. When I want Buffalo pizza, it's got to be Picasso's.
Khalil Shakir. Your team, our pizza. Picasso's. This is Buffalo Pizza.
This episode is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza, with 4 convenient locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's Pizza has been serving Buffalo's best pizza since 1980. Whether you're a local or across the country, you can enjoy their delicious pizza delivered fresh to your door. Visit picassospizza.net to place your order today. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, Dave, every week to start the show, we look for one big thing. We got to scatter through all the dozens of things that we want to talk about, and we got to pick the one storyline, our biggest takeaway from this game. I'll start with you, comment section. If you've got one big takeaway from this game, let us know what your big takeaway is. What is your, Dave, biggest takeaway from this game?
Man, it's hard to pick just one, but I'm going to have to say that Bills offensive line and the ability for them to run block in this game and kind of come into this game. We talked about in the pregame, test that Seattle run D. We thought, based on DVOA, that run D was a little better than maybe as advertised, although they were bottom 5 ranked in raw statistics. The Bills went ahead and just continued to exert their will in the running game. And my big thing, I guess, is just the total team blocking. It was the offensive line, it was the tight ends, it was the receivers on the edges, and James Cook showing that he looked, I think, to me, a bit healthier this week than he did a week ago. It just seemed like he had a little bit of an extra edge to him this week. Maybe didn't like all the talk about Ray Davis maybe coming for his job, which obviously we didn't think was really going to happen. But you could see that the Bills were trying to feature James Cook in this game. And so for them to continue to commit to the running game, overcoming a lot of mistakes, by the way, again, we'll get to the stock down on that later on in the show. But I have to say my one big thing for this game has got to be the Bills' offensive line and sort of how they came into a hostile environment, a good Seattle defensive line, and they pushed those guys around, obviously in the running game, but also protected Josh Allen and gave him plenty of time to throw in the passing game almost the entire length of the game.
Yeah, I know Nate Tice, formerly of The Athletic. Man, where is he now? Yahoo Sports. He did a really good breakdown today showing how the Buffalo Bills have just been so effective using the inside zone run. And he went through and he illustrated just how creative Joe Brady is at setting up the inside zone, all the different formations, all the different personnel packages. He masks it in order for the Buffalo Bills to get into those inside zones. So obviously the opponent doesn't see it coming, and the Buffalo Bills have been very, very effective in running that inside zone. And James Cook, as you mentioned, was absolutely on fire this game. We're going to talk about James Cook a little bit more here in a moment, but my one big thing involves James Cook a little bit here. And it's the Buffalo Bills draft classes showing up
Mm.
and showing out on offense. Obviously, you have Josh Allen, who was one of the first picks from this regime all the way back in 2017. But you have second round pick James Cook, 17 carries for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ray Davis, a fourth round pick, effective when called upon, 6 carries for 29 yards. Khalil Shakir, a fifth round pick, 9 catches on 10 targets for 107 yards. Keon Coleman, our first pick this year in the second round, 5 catches on 7 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown. And then you had our first round pick a season ago, plus a third round pick, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, going a combined 6 for 81 and a touchdown. The only non-draft picks on the stat sheet for the Buffalo Bills on offense were Amari Cooper with 1 catch for 3 yards and Mitch Trubisky, who kneeled the ball down 3 times for -3 yards. Those are the only non-Buffalo Bills draft picks on the box score stat sheet. Not to mention 3 of the 5 offensive linemen who dominated this game, as you just mentioned, were draft picks. All these guys I mentioned, Sans Ray Davis, 4th round, Khalil Shakir, 5th round, were premium draft picks. Josh Allen's touchdowns yesterday went to the Bills' first picks in the last 2 drafts, Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman. The Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane's draft classes are showing up on offense. Josh Allen has the weapons that he needs to be successful.
Yeah, they're showing up, and this is a class in team building, right? I think when you start to think about how the Bills had procured talent in the past, there were plenty of rosters and individual players that this team had under other regimes, whether it was, Buddy Nix, Doug Whaley, all of that, where they had good talent. But Brandon Beane has really done a good job of kind of putting pieces together that fit well together. Obviously, having that sort of communication and being in lockstep with McDermott during the draft process and kind of understanding what types of what types of approach they want to take both on offense and defense, but especially on offense. You mentioned with these offensive draft picks, it is really blended well. And Ray Davis, by the way, could have had an even better game if it wasn't for a couple runs called back for holding as well. So, and how about Ray Davis as a rookie at the end of the game as well, sliding, albeit it really was inconsequential, but smart play nonetheless to
Yeah.
slide down and just kind of have the Bills salt that game away. So really great contributions. And obviously Keon Coleman highlighting that, Josh Allen clearly showing his trust in Coleman with not just the touchdown catch he threw against Woolen, but the seam route up the left sideline as well, showing that trust in him. And after he came back from an early, I don't want to call it drop, but an opportunity down the right sideline that he probably wishes he could have caught, but still continue to come back to him. So, yeah, the rookie class and draft picks in general have been impressive.
Let's take a look now at some of the data. Josh Allen even used the word in his post-game press conference, complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. They all showed up yesterday. Looking at the 3 pieces of data that we track, time of possession, the Buffalo Bills crushed the Seattle Seahawks 38-03 to 21-57. The Buffalo Bills actually got smacked in average starting field position. Seattle started from the 31-yard line on average, and the Buffalo Bills started from the 19-yard line on average. I did not count the last series of the halves for either team in that data calculation because that would have skewed the data a little bit, and those are 2 very inconsequential drives. The Bills had 2 90-plus yard touchdown drives in the first half for the first time since 1993, and they're the first NFL team to march down the field in the first half twice, 90-plus yards, since Week 16 of 2022 when the Carolina Panthers did it. The Buffalo Bills won the turnover battle. Seattle had 3 turnovers to the Bills 1. Now, one of Seattle's turnovers was on downs when Geno Smith tripped at the goal line there and gave the Buffalo Bills the ball back. So the Bills, of the 3 data points that we track, time of possession, average starting field position, turnovers, they won 2 of those, and the Bills are now 5-1 when winning the complementary football differential, 0-1 when losing.
Yeah, and they really were not in great field position, as you mentioned. Geno Smith on that 4th down, obviously they're backed up basically into their own end zone. Seattle's punter, I agree. I was about to mention,
He's so
Doug
good, dude.
mentions here, Michael Dixon had 2 punts inside the 20, including one that pinned the Bills inside the 10. So the starting field position was not great, but the Bills also had a lot of good drive starting plays, which has been, an issue for this team in the past, couple games. And, one of the big stats that stood out to me as well, it isn't necessarily part of our data tracking, but a data stat nonetheless, was the Bills were 8 for 15 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth down. So a combined 9 for 16 on third and fourth downs, well above their season average, which was in the mid 30 percentages, bottom 10 in the NFL. They then go over 50% in this game on third and fourth downs combined, which was a huge factor. And you heard Joe Brady talk about that today. If you listened to his press conference this afternoon, some of the questions the beat guys were at, he made it very clear that converting on third downs was a huge reason that this team was successful as well in this game. And so that's how you can kind of overcome penalties and bad starting field position, is by being better on third down.
Yeah, I mean, you've been harping on third down for a couple of weeks now. When we talk about sort of our negative takeaways, you've consistently pointed out the Buffalo Bills third down conversion rate each of the past couple of weeks. So they went out and they corrected that on Sunday. Looking at the toxic differential tracker, 10-plus yard runs, the Seahawks had 1, and that 1 was against our prevent defense late in the game. The Bills had 5 10-plus yard runs in this game. 16-plus yard passes, Seattle had 3. 2 of them were on our prevent defense late in the game. So really, if you look at it, only 1 explosive play for Seattle this entire football game. The Buffalo Bills had 16 plus yard passes, and then turnovers. The Bills were +2 because they had 3, or they forced 3, while the Seattle Seahawks only forced 1. So the Bills were +9 in toxic differential. And once again, they are 5-1 on the season when winning toxic differential, 0-1 when losing.
Yeah. And I think, a couple of these big plays in this game, obviously Josh throws the interception, and some of the things that maybe go unnoticed here is the Bills did not let Seattle return that for a touchdown. And then the corresponding, next couple plays for the Seattle's when Geno Smith trips over, his center, and the Bills get the ball back on that turnover on down. So sort of the unwritten or the unseen things in the box score there, like stopping them from taking that interception back for the touchdown, really could have changed, in my mind, momentum in this game after Geno Smith tripped, and gave the Bills the ball back. And it's funny because I would be curious to see in our data tracking, if we go back and see, like, we obviously count turnover on downs as part of our turnovers, and in the official box scores, they don't really count that. But I can recall at least now probably 2 or 3 times that we've talked about the Bills stopping teams on fourth downs. The Titans game, they did that.
Yep.
And I believe in the Jets game as well, they did that. And they might have as well, even in the Miami game. So there have been a lot of times as well where the Bills have stopped teams on fourth down. So to me, that was huge as well.
Yeah, you're right. The Titans game had one, the Jets game one, and the Dolphins game all had huge, if you want to use this term, some people don't really believe in it, but momentum swinging, momentum changing fourth down stops. So the Buffalo Bills have been excellent executing 8 for 8 this year offensively on fourth down, and stopping other teams' attempts on fourth down this season. Let's get into some more takeaways from this game, and let's go to our stock up, our positive takeaways from this football game. I did my notes this morning. I had to wake up early to do it because I knew I wouldn't have time this afternoon. And I just wrote Josh Allen in my notes. I didn't put anything else. So Dave, talk about Josh Allen today a little bit. I know the jinx was real this week. Everyone wanted him to throw a pick, and he threw a pick. Amari Cooper tripped, but everything else about his day was pretty darn good, huh?
You know what? It was going to happen. It was never going to be a no pick season. So in a game where it became a very inconsequential play at the end of the day, right? Because who knows what would have happened had they scored on that pick, if they got a pick six or had scored on the next couple plays. But I don't even think that was that bad of a decision. I would say it probably wasn't a good throw. And then obviously Amari Cooper tripped as well, but it wasn't one of those where you're like scratching your head, like, what did he do? Why was he throwing that ball? So it was nice at least to see that his first pick came on a play that wasn't like a total head scratcher. Otherwise, he was brilliant all day. dropping balls where they needed to be dropped in the bucket to guys, trusting his guys, putting the ball in position where guys could run after the catch, accurate throws on those sidearm delivery screen plays to Shakir and otherwise, hitting Kincaid, climbing up in the pocket. Didn't run a ton, only 25 yards on the ground in this game, but a couple key plays where he did run and pick up some first downs, but ultimately handled the conditions well. Rainy, slippery ball, threw the ball well, made good decisions. And in a lot of cases, he had multiple guys that he could go to. I think this Joe Brady offense is really working well for Josh Allen as being a sort of a progression style offense for him, as opposed to kind of like optionality and sort of this different chess and cat and mouse type of style that Ken Dorsey had. This progression style that Joe Brady's implemented, giving him multiple options, reading one side of the field for multiple progressions, has really worked for him. And he's been super efficient and had another great day, limiting the negative plays, obviously outside of the interception. But I thought, I mean, it was funny to see Matthew Bove's tweet at the end of the game said it was not such a stellar day for him, and I'm like, I don't think we watched the same game, because I thought he was phenomenal in this game.
And maybe that's just to like, and Bove went back and commented later, like he's like, got off the plane and saw the firestorm of comments here. I think he realized too that he kind of, and not to blame him, he probably just fired off that tweet without thinking. And Josh Allen has just put up so many phenomenal games that maybe that kind of looks sort of pedestrian compared to some of the other games he's put up before. But yeah, that was not the best adjective in the world to use. But how awesome was it to see, as the Buffalo Bills got into the red zone, Josh Allen just take a step back and loft a football up to somebody? Like, that was cool. Getting to see Keon Coleman go up against Tariq Woolen and Josh Allen just trusting him mano a mano. It didn't work to the left side. So then they come back and do it right again, like 2 plays later to the right side. And Keon Coleman goes up and makes a play. Josh Allen having that tool in his toolbox now, having something else that he can go to, and having this play or this concept that just was non-existent in our offense previous to drafting Keon Coleman. Pretty darn awesome to have.
Yeah, and I said this in the Discord chat not too long ago. I was like, look, Keon Coleman was a player. I mean, we said this even after the Bills drafted him, but stylistically, a guy we haven't had paired with Josh Allen in this offense, whether it was under Brian Daboll, Ken Dorsey, now Joe Brady. We just haven't had this type of player with Josh Allen. It's been a lot of separator type guys, Diggs, Beasley, John Brown, Shakir, and now you have a different type of player here, a different archetype. You have a guy that you can make those types of throws to in the end zone. You didn't really have that guy in the past. Maybe Gabe Davis would have been that guy, but that wasn't really his game either. But it fits Keon Coleman's game well, and you can see why Josh Allen was maybe enamored with him leading up to the draft and kind of maybe putting his voice in the mix as far as like wanting a guy like that. Maybe he wanted a guy like this all along, and we just needed to kind of find the right one for him, because now he's got that. He's got the separator in Shakir. He's got the smooth, big bodied target in Kincaid. So he's got a lot of different types of weapons now, and this just kind of adds to the mix, like you mentioned.
Speaking of weapons, James Cook, 17 carries on the day for 111 yards, 6.5 yards per carry average, 2 touchdowns. He had 3 catches on the day as well for 22 yards. He showed vision. He showed patience. He was decisive. He was making all the right cuts in this game, and he was getting really physical too. I mean, he's been a stud all season. So, take this with a grain of salt, but to me, it looks like this is a guy who has seen all of the commentary about how Ray Davis was the finger quotes better fit for this offense. And that has sort of fueled James Cook's performances the last couple of weeks here for the Buffalo Bills, because he's been really good the last 2 weeks.
He's been really good, and he looked healthier this week to me than he did against the Titans. And I know that Titans matchup wasn't the easiest matchup, but he looked light on his feet, I would say, in this one. And it was a combination of him looking light on his feet and finishing with power. He was smart at times where he knew he was going to get hit. He got down, but he also finished some runs, obviously highlighted by that touchdown at the end. And what was cool about James Cook's game and his 2 touchdowns was the 2 touchdowns were kind of 2 completely different types of runs. You had him showing his lateral agility and burst to the
Mhm.
sideline or to the pylon, I should
I
say.
can't
On the
believe he
one where
beat I can't believe he beat PFF number 1 linebacker Tyrell Dodson
yeah,
like that.
Tyler Dodson getting
Unbelievable.
out to the edge there, and then on the final TD run, just up the middle and then finishing it off, plowing the guy over into the end zone. So, um, and also was very cool to see James Cook from some of the cut ups that Eric did on the film room piece that went out today was like how good he is with his feet in those really small spaces between the
Mhm.
linemen. Like his balance is really good. He finds a way to slip through very small windows in between those linemen. And I think he just had a really good feel for the game yesterday. It started out that way. And you could tell like he had a really good feel for where his blockers were going to be, where he needed to cut. And it all added up to his first 100-yard game of the year.
Yeah, on pace for 17 touchdowns this season as well between the running game and the receiving game. So a huge, huge season for James Cook, pacing a little behind 1,000 yards rushing right now because he missed that game. But if he keeps playing like he did today, he will soon be back towards pacing over 8,000 yards. Keon Coleman, the trust with Josh Allen has grown. We've already mentioned him and Josh Allen throwing the ball up to him. It was really cool to see him high point that ball, elbow through the rim like he was dunking all over Tariq Woolen, who's 6'4" and a really good cornerback in this National Football League. He seems to really understand the game too, Keon Coleman. He pointed out to Josh Allen a cornerback blitz on his last big catch of the game there in the fourth quarter. He was getting after it as a blocker. You know, the videos going around of him driving the guy into the ground and then pointing at him. He obviously got that one penalty for driving a guy into the bench. Deion Dawkins went out of his way after the game not to compliment Keon Coleman, the receiver, but to compliment Keon Coleman, the run blocker, and to state like this is what Sean McDermott has been wanting from this wide receiver room. Guys doing what Keon Coleman went out there and did on Sunday. He set the tempo not only as a receiver, but getting after in the run game as well. Another solid showing from Keon Coleman, who maybe not the bust that some people wanted to think he was after the first couple of weeks.
No, the run blocking has been fantastic. I put a stat out in the Discord chat and on Twitter just before the show. Of all players with 20 plus catches, there's only 3 guys in the NFL that are averaging over 18 yards a catch: AJ Brown, Rashad Bateman, and Keon Coleman of the Bills. And so, yes, he's ascending and improving each week, right? I think that it was always going to be tough, I think, with the pressure on him, maybe out of the gates as being the number one, maybe even relied on as the number one target, where we thought it was going to be Kincaid. And it just kind of evolved now into the fact that Amari Cooper is here. And I know he only had the 1 catch for 3 yards, but everyone else kind of having that less pressure on him, as we talked about last week. I think that's also helped Keon Coleman as well. It takes a little bit of pressure off him. It also helps having a guy like Cooper in the building to kind of mentor him as well. So big stock up for Keon. I'm really happy. He's just under 400 receiving yards now, just about halfway through the season. We said at the beginning of the season, somewhere in that sort of 500 to 700 yard range would be a good season for him. And he's on pace to look like he's going to get about 700 to 800 yards this year.
700-800 yards, 6 touchdowns. But if he becomes that red zone weapon like he has the last couple of weeks, we could see that number increase as well. Coleman now ranks, according to NFL Next Gen Stats, 5th in receiving yards over expected this season at plus 136. Him and Khalil Shakir are both in the top 5 in the National Football League in yards after the catch. Xavier Worthy, comparing him to Keon Coleman here, not that I want to do too much comparing because they're two very different players, but he has accumulated negative 134 yards over expected this season, the second fewest in the National Football League. Khalil Shakir, who I just mentioned, him, Keon Coleman, top 5 yards after catch in the National Football League. That was a huge talking point for 2 years now for the Buffalo Bills. He went 9 of 10 in this game for 107 yards. He is an extension of the running game. You just get the ball in his hands. I believe his average depth of target was like 3.8 or something compared to Keon Coleman, which was past the sticks at 10 plus. He's a running back once he catches the ball, and he's just got insane contact balance. The Bills fans were all calling him a supercharged Cole Beasley on social media. Tom Brady was saying he was a bigger Wes Welker. So there was nothing but love for Khalil Shakir on Sunday. He is the safety blanket that Josh Allen needs. And really, if you think about it, he's the number 1 receiver on this Buffalo Bills offense.
Yeah, he is the number one receiver, and at the end of the day, like the hidden yardage that he creates after the catch is really what impresses me so much about Khalil Shakir, because a couple of those plays, he's slipping through guys. It reminded me a little bit of James Cook in the way he slips through
Mhm.
some of the offensive linemen. They pick up those extra yards. Shakir after the catch is special. His contact balance is incredible. And we said that as part of the pre-draft evaluation of him, is that he just kind of picks up those extra 2 to 3
Mhm.
yards that you just don't expect the guy to get, and it just makes it, instead of a 3rd and 6, it's now 3rd and 2, and you have a much better chance of picking up those conversions with that. So he is, I think, the number one receiver. I think he'd shown that sort of throughout the season, and we'll see if that kind of, maybe there's a changing of the guard with Amari Cooper at some point. But
Mhm.
like, I still think in crunch time and in key moments, he's still going to probably be the number one option for Josh Allen, at least for some time.
Yeah, Quad Puig coming in and saying he really does have that combination of Cole Beasley's trust with a little bit more wiggle. I like that. Not just so much Cole Beasley, the receiver, but the relationship and the chemistry he had with Josh Allen, tying that in there as well. So I really like that comment there from Quad. Kincaid and Knox combined for 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Kincaid was 4 for 31 and a touchdown. Dawson Knox with 2 big catches for 50 yards in this game on National Tight Ends Day of all day. I'm pretty sure that the NFL just made that day up out of thin air. I don't know what's going on there, but I think they set the record for most tight end touchdowns in a single week this week on National Tight End Day. If there was ever any conspiracy theorists out there who want to say the NFL is fixed, that might be one of the things that you point to as proof. But a big day for the Buffalo Bills tight ends.
Yeah, it was nice to see Kincaid as the take me higher and Knox as the wild card player show up. Knox definitely made his impact felt.
Mhm.
Couple big plays, 2 for 50. So obviously made those catches count for him. Josh hit him in the third quarter, would end up being a big play to set up James Cook's final touchdown there. So obviously you'd love to see that. And then Kincaid on the touchdown, adjusting sort of his route and kind of putting his body in a position where he can move upfield and getting that touchdown for Josh Allen as he climbed the pocket there. So a nice day for the tight ends. We thought there could be some room for them to operate
Mhm.
against the Seattle defense, who was 21st in DVOA against defending the tight end. And as we mentioned in the pregame, had given up some big games to tight ends in the last couple of weeks to Pitts and Kittle. So that trend continued for the Bills with Knox and Kincaid taking advantage of that matchup.
Yeah, Carl Dolman coming in with a super chat. Always appreciate you, Carl. He says Keon's touchdown catch was ridiculous. Tariq Woolen had awesome coverage and had his arm in between Keon, but Keon caught it anyway with just one hand. Wow. Yeah. To me, it was kind of like when you're dunking a basketball and you put your elbow through the rim. That's kind of what it looked like, the
Yeah,
way he went up and grabbed that. And I don't know, maybe you can speak to this, but just as a fan watching that game, like I'm always watching the game, trying to critically analyze it, thinking about like what we're going to talk about in the show and all those things. But Keon Coleman's performance yesterday, it kind of took me out of that mindset. And I just wanted to watch him play. And I'm like, I just want to see them throw him the ball. I just want to see what happens when you throw him the ball. And I was just rooting. I'm like, when's Keon's next catch? When's he going to touch the ball next? When's he going to touch the ball? Like I was just sort of as a fan, just wanting him to touch the ball because every time he touches the ball, something electric happens.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is we haven't, like we just said, we haven't really seen a player like this on the Bills for some time, right? I mean, that was like an Eric Moulds-esque catch that he made
Mhm.
over Tariq Woolen. I mean, that's the type of play that you used to see from Moulds, and so for him to make that type of play, and we haven't really seen a whole lot of that from the Bills receiving core over the past several years. It does give you
Mhm.
a reason to kind of pause and just appreciate what he's bringing to the game. So I do like that. I agree with that take, and it's always exciting to see what he's going to do, because you mentioned the yards above expected. He has been a menace too after he's caught the ball and kind of making things happen after the catch. And obviously not on that particular
Mhm.
play, but on other plays this season he has done that. So a guy that doesn't go down easily either.
Amari Cooper, just one catch for 3 yards in this game. His other target, he slipped on that slick Lumen Field turf, and it led to Josh Allen's first interception of the season. I saw a lot of people, and it's a vocal minority on social media, but starting to complain, why trade for him if you're not going to throw him the ball? I can't believe the Buffalo Bills are going to waste another star receiver, as if they had wasted Stephon Diggs, who had his best career years in
Yeah.
Buffalo. So I kind of got a little salty on social media last night, and I tweeted the following. The only correct Amari Cooper take today is the following. I love how his gravity opens things up for other guys. Can't wait till he's acclimated and gets more involved in the offense himself. Anything else is attention-seeking commentary, because I truly believe those words that I posted. If you're seriously going to, after that game, sit and complain about how many targets Amari Cooper got, what are we doing here? Right? Let's give it a couple of weeks, and let's also understand that Amari Cooper is not Stephon Diggs. I think he understands what stage of the career he's in, and he is just happy to be one of the 5 or 6 guys that are going to eat, and it's going to rotate week by week who eats in this Buffalo Bills offense. I don't think Amari Cooper is going to be a problem.
No, it's not going to be a problem. And also, like, the reality is you didn't need him in this game. Right? I mean, that's just like Shakir had the matchup. You had the tight ends working, and James Cook was doing his thing. Like, you didn't need to throw Amari Cooper out there to run block in this game, for example, right? You could let Coleman do that. You can let Mac Hollins do that. It's still only his second week here. And as Pop says, Cooper takes coverage away from other guys. Yes, that helps. And I think that over time, that's only going to get exaggerated, right? Because he's not just going to be there to kind of like take coverage away from other guys. He's also going to be a guy that contributes. So it's going to be a process, right? Like, this is a guy you just traded for. And I think the fact that he scored the first game that he played and had, those 4 like maybe set up a little bit of unreasonable expectation for how he was going to be like every game, at least in the short term. I think in the long term, as we get like maybe into this Miami game or the Colts, or as we get into that tough stretch we mentioned, he is going to be relied upon. He is going to need to be a major factor in contributing to the success of the offense. But it wasn't even like the Bills absolutely like needed him in this game, and he was like a reason they did or did not win. So it's also nice to have games like that.
Another thing you kind of mentioned or hinted at already, the execution of the offense, 2+ 90-yard drives in this game, both in the first half, overcoming penalties, which we'll talk about in the next segment of the show when we talk about our negative takeaways. They were 8 for 15 on third down. They were 1 for 1 on fourth down. They are now 8 for 8 on the season on fourth down. You got to love how Sean McDermott essentially feels like 1 yard is a given with Josh Allen in the QB sneak, and he's willing to go from the 1 yard line anywhere. He went from his own 40 in this football game. And there was one national pundit, and I can't give him credit for it because I can't remember who it was, and I didn't write it down, but he's like, any other offense would have been absolutely crippled by the penalties the Buffalo Bills were taking, and they just sort of shrugged it off. They laughed it off and just kept marching down the field, and it just kind of shows the absolutely type of like sicko offense this Buffalo Bills team can have when they are firing on all cylinders. So the Buffalo Bills were able to execute. They were able to control the clock, and they were able to move the ball down the field. Average starting field position, 19-yard line, didn't matter in this football game.
Didn't matter. And I really like the first down, especially on first down, the first down play calls in this game. I thought were, it was varied. It was effective. It wasn't predictable. I think that was a huge reason that they had success in some of these longer drives. I think the first down play calling from Joe Brady might have been his best so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Brady, the mix of the run and the pass, like we talked about in the pregame show, like expect a lot of runs on first down because the Buffalo Bills are not going to want Derek Hall and Boye Mafe to be able to pin their ears back. They want to be in short yardage situations so they can convert and they can keep the trains running on time. But the Buffalo Bills kind of zigged while everyone else thought they were going to zag, and they mixed the run and the pass. 3 of their first 6 down plays were passes. By the end of the game, you sort of had Thanos, the perfect balance. The game ended 34-34 run pass. Joe Brady mixed in play action in this game. Josh Allen on the season has 362 yards and 2 touchdowns on play action passes. Yesterday, he was 7 for 8 for 104 yards and a touchdown on play action before we even entered the fourth quarter. And this was a team that didn't run a single play action in the first half at all last week against Tennessee. So it was nice to see that. Our guy Pro Anthony's probably going to speak more on this week on Disguised Coverage, which comes out tomorrow night. Entering week 8, this is what Anth wrote. The Bills had 29 play action passes, which was lowest in the league, and a play action rate of 14.4%, which was the second lowest in the league. But against Seattle, they had 9 play action passes, tied for 11th on the week, for a play action rate of 25.7%, which was 12th on the week. 6 of those 9 play action passes came on first down for an EPA per play of 0.68, which was tied 7th in the league that week. The other 3 came on second down for an EPA per pass of 1, which was 4th in the league. So the Bills made sure to implement play action this week, and they need to continue doing that because it just gives those linebackers something else they need to think about, and it just opens things up over the middle of the field. It puts guys in conflict. Keep running that play action.
Keep running it. And we said in the pregame, like, you don't have to go extreme, right? And try to like go all the way to the top of the league, but you need to do it a little bit more. And we talked about like, well, is there a point of diminishing return on that? Well, like they found a nice sweet spot in this game for it. So I think, that type of rate, 25%, that to me would kind of be where I'd be looking to kind of settle in, plus or minus. But that to me seems like a nice sweet spot for the Bills. I hope they do that as well against Miami next week. It will probably be a nice, a nice thing to kind of do after having success with it this week, showing that, hey, you can ratchet it up a bit and still have success. And so I'd like to see that continue. I'm with you. And it was nice to see kind of Joe Brady, not like listen to people about it, right? But realize like, this is something that we're successful at. I'm going to do it a little bit more in this game.
Yeah, I can just picture Joe Brady now watching Disguise coverage last week with Anthony, with his notepad, just taking notes. Oh, here's what I'm going to do this week. Because really a lot of what Ant talked about, Joe Brady installed into the offense this week. One last note I had on the offense, and you already sort of mentioned it, so we'll just kind of breeze by it, but the offensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. 164 rushing yards in this game. 38 minutes time of possession. That was on them, right? Like that was us controlling the line of scrimmage. So kudos to the Buffalo Bills offensive line. Defensively, 3 points conceded in the first half for 96 yards. Seattle had 1 first half rushing yard. They accumulated 7 points in the second half. Those 7 points came in garbage time. It was the first second half touchdown allowed by the Buffalo Bills in over a month since the Baltimore Ravens game. A totally dominant performance from this Buffalo Bills defense, minus Terrell Bernard, and that was our biggest concern in the pregame.
Yeah, I think the Bills' best tackling game of the season, Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson set the tone early, I thought, from a tackling perspective, from a swagger and aggressiveness perspective. You held the Seahawks to 1 for 7 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down, so 1 for 8 there. You didn't have those sort of gut-wrenching, I don't want to call them back-breaking, but a little bit gut-wrenching, disheartening, long third-down conversions in this game, as you've seen the Bills give up in recent weeks. You didn't really have that in this game, so that was nice to see that Bills third-down defense really showed up, and obviously Gregory Rosseau setting the tone early as well with a couple of passes defended, some tackles for loss. I mean, he was close all day. Pops texted me before the show, and he's like, why didn't he get credit for the sack on that one where Geno fell over? And it was because like they counted it as a running play because I think he was going to hand it off, I guess. But they didn't give him a sack on that. Actually, Solomon was the only one with a sack in the game. But the Bills' pressure was there from their line and certain packages they had, even though the box score shows they only got to Geno once and it was later in the game. They were disrupting his timing. And I do think that's what sort of allowed the Bills to get away with having Spector and Williams in coverage for a lot of this game was they weren't letting Geno sit back in the pocket all day and pick them apart. I know at the end of the day, his completion percentage looked pretty good, but he really didn't do a ton of damage to you where you thought he would. They were kind of hollow yards for him in this game. So I thought that defensive line really did a good job. And then at times when they did bring other extra pressure, did a really good job. Getting close and affecting Geno, and not, even though they didn't necessarily take him down.
You sort of mentioned third down defense. Seattle was 1 for 7. Their red zone defense, Seattle was 1 for 3 in the red zone. And that touchdown that they scored was really in garbage time. The Buffalo Bills had 2 goal line stands. Of course, they were Seattle assisted goal line stands. But nonetheless, the Buffalo Bills did a really good job in this game. And sometimes you just got to take advantage, right? Like offenses screw up unless you're the Buffalo Bills and it's the wild card round against the New England Patriots. Like offenses screw up, right? But so combining an offensive screw up with a dominating performance, you have an absolute game, which is what the Buffalo Bills had. Are there things they can clean up? I think so. Like, I think the Seattle had a terrible game plan. You kind of mentioned at the top of the show, like, I kind of wasn't sure what the hell they were doing, like offensively.
Yeah, I didn't understand it at all.
I
Didn't make
like,
sense to me.
I felt like, and kudos to them for stepping in, right? Like Bale Inspector and stuff. But like, I feel like those linebackers could have been attacked, and I feel like they were kind of attacked a couple of times,
They were.
and just not effectively. Like, so I feel like that game could have been a lot worse if like Seattle's offensive coordinator had his head on his shoulders that game, or Geno Smith had his head on his shoulders in that game. I feel like they could have, or it was just a different team we were playing. I feel like the results would have been a little bit different because I feel like Bernard being out really does affect this team. And I'm not looking forward to playing the Miami Dolphins without him. So that's going to be one of the things as Pops Mafia comes in and says, do you think Bernard will be back on Sunday? Honestly, I don't know. Sean McDermott kind of just said, hey, he didn't travel with the team. He's rehabbing. He's resting up. It'll be really interesting to watch the injury report this week and see what kind of participant Terrell Bernard is in practice, because I would really like him back. I think Miami, even though they just lost to Arizona and we can all laugh at them, hee ha ha, like Tua can pick apart Dorian Williams and Bale Inspector. Like that's a team that could probably take advantage of those two if they wanted to. So let's get Terrell Bernard back because he's one of the strengths of our defense.
It would be nice, and I'm kind of looking ahead to that Chiefs game in a couple, 3 weeks or whatever, and we're gonna need him 100% for that one. I don't think they're gonna hold him out for 2 games just to make sure he's ready for that one. This Miami game is still really important for the Bills to get a home division win and kind of really try to essentially salt this division away as early as they possibly can. So it would be nice to have Bernard back. The fact that he didn't travel, I don't know how much we can read into that. It's obviously a West Coast trip. Maybe they would have traveled if it was a team they were playing on the East Coast. But I think with that long travel, you don't want a guy to be sitting on a plane for 4 or 5 hours and that ankle kind of just sitting there. So it makes sense. We'll see what kind of practice reps he gets this week, if any, and we'll just have to hope that he can be back for this one.
We talked about in the pregame show, you had a rookie 6th-round pick, right tackle Mike Gerald. Gregory Rosseau had to dominate him. You have a Seattle team that was giving up the 6th most interior pressures. Ed Oliver had to come alive in this game. Gregory Rosseau, Ed Oliver, and the entirety of the defensive line, they did not disappoint. They controlled the line of scrimmage for the Buffalo Bills. As a team, they combined for 5 tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Rousseau dominated his matchup with Gerald all game long. 2 TFLs, a QB hit, 2 pass breakups on the first drive, which really set the tone, as Carl Thoman was saying in the comment section. I put his comment up a second ago. Austin Johnson with the big man interception, and Seattle ran the ball 17 times for 43 yards, 1.9 yard per carry in this game. So the Buffalo Bills defensive line, even Javon Solomon, lone sack in this game on one of his 4 snaps. He always seems to pop when he gets a chance. The Buffalo Bills defensive line absolutely dominated the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, dominated, and mentioned it already. We're so like having those 2 good games in a row now is like, that's what I want to start seeing from him, is that consistency week to week. And so was really nice to see that. And obviously I think that matchup, you got to like this matchup coming up against Miami's offensive line. If you're Greg Rousseau, make it a 3 for 3 in a row here. And I think it's good momentum for him. Nice to see Solomon get into the action. And then, we've got Von Miller coming back. In theory, we got Von Miller coming back this week. I'm assuming they'll make some kind of roster move to make that official. And so it'll be nice to have him back in the mix now against now the Tua-led once again Dolphins for this upcoming game.
Carl Thurman comes with a super chat. Appreciate you, Carl. He says about 1 month away from maybe getting Milano back. So Von Miller getting healthy, Matt Milano getting healthy, hopefully. Whether he misses another week or not, Terrell Bernard, a couple of weeks till the bye. Maybe we can get Terrell Bernard in one piece, and everything should be clicking for this Buffalo Bills defense health-wise with our best players on the field by the time we hit the month of December. Fingers crossed for that. Boss Mafia also comes in and says, props to Casey Toohill. in the past deflected on the interception. He's had a really good season. I mean, despite how much we made fun of him on 53-man roster cutdown day, he has earned his place on this roster. And Claude Puy said he's been impressed by Dorian Williams' play as of late. Yeah, I mean, there are some people I see on social media starting to look at Matt Milano's spot track number and is like, oh, do we want to move on from Matt Milano this offseason? I don't know if you want to go that far, because I think once Matt Milano gets back, even though he hasn't played in probably 2 years almost now, I think once he gets back and gets comfortable, you're going to remember just how good Matt Milano is. And just having Dorian Williams, the absolute piss missile that he is in the running game, would be really nice. Like if we ever want to deploy 3 linebacker sets anytime in the future, like maybe when we're playing a team like the, I don't know, Baltimore Ravens, like that might be a nice place to have Milano and Dorian Williams. Special teams. Sam Martin had a great day. Tyler Bass had a great day. We'll talk about the returners in a moment because that wasn't so pleasant, but a good day for most special teams units for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, no, Bass has been kind of, steady, I would say. Hasn't had really any long kicks of late, but he's been steady, at least making the ones that you never expect 100%, although you probably do expect 100% on things under 40 yards, even though that's not super realistic. He has made everything of late, even though they have been of the shorter variety. Martin, after a kind of a weird couple weeks, weird week against the Titans and the Jets, a nice bounce back effort from him, and Bills didn't really have to punt a ton in this one, but a nice game for him nonetheless. Only 3 punts, but 49 average and 1 inside the 20. So he's been better than I think we all thought he would be this year as a punter. Couple bad ones, obviously, but he has been a lot more consistent this year than he was a year ago.
On to the negative side, stock down. Some of our things that need to get cleaned up for the Buffalo Bills. Let's stick with special teams and a guy. It's probably because we've been singing his praises the last couple of weeks, but Brandon Codrington, that goal line punt return was a little yikes. Fielding that ball right at the goal line and taking it out. And I felt like that had an effect on our starting field position, and also Ray Davis bringing the ball out twice and getting smacked. And there's always seems to be a penalty on special teams, and there was, of course, a penalty on one of those plays as well. So I feel like our starting field position was the 19-yard line. It wasn't great. It could have been better if our returners had made some better decisions and just taken the knee or taken the fair catch or letting the ball go out the back of the end zone.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's like you mentioned, and feels like every return these days, there's a penalty. As Pop says, don't catch it inside the 5. Take your chances, because you're either going to be at the 2 or the 3 or the 5. So take your chances. You get those extra 15, 20 yards if it actually goes through the end zone. Unfortunate that on one of Ray Davis's return that he actually had a decent return that got called back. So that was a bummer as well. And that kind of segues into, I think, what is on a lot of people's mind is the penalties that need to be cleaned up, because this team's being penalized a lot, and a lot of pre-snap penalties on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now they've been involved now between that Jets game, which was heavily criticized for how many penalties there were in that one, and not necessarily because
Ron Torbert, hold my beer.
Yeah, like whether you thought the officiating was good or not, like, okay, we can get that into that discussion. But now the Bills in 2 of the last 3 weeks have been involved in the 2 most penalized games in the National Football League this year. So, and it's not just their opponent, right? It's them as well. So these penalties really need to be cleaned up. You can't be making these kind of mistakes, I think, against teams like the Lions and Chiefs and Niners coming up in the schedule. So they were able to overcome them in this game because they had a lot of things going their way, but just don't make it harder on yourself than you need to.
Yeah, I mean, flag happy crew. It was getting ridiculous. Every time there was a chunk play, I was like looking around like, where's the flag? Is there a flag? Is there a flag? Most penalties in the game all season. But the Bills, as you mentioned, as Carl in the comment section mentioned, like the Buffalo Bills are just doing themselves no favors, and at some point, getting all those penalties are going to catch up to you. They were able to overcome it in this game and just still convert somehow and go on those 2 90+ yard drives in the first half. But that's not always going to be the case. I mean, we saw the first half last week against Tennessee, where that one ticky-tack call on Deion Dawkins threw off an entire drive, and it was part of what led to us going 3-and-out on our first 3 drives against Tennessee Titans and getting off to that slow start. So the penalties need to be cleaned up. The decisions about when and when not to return kicks needs to be cleaned up. And then defensively, the only 2 things I can really point to, we already sort of mentioned, a better team probably would have taken advantage of those linebackers. A couple of times Dorian Williams looked like he got twisted around, but they weren't able to convert, or it was garbage time, so it didn't matter. Really hope Terrell Bernard is back. And it also seems like the Buffalo Bills struggled a little bit when Seattle went to a hurry up, but I don't think it was anything too serious. But that's something an opponent might see and maybe try to incorporate more into their offense, because it does seem like the Buffalo Bills, without their green dot in the middle, Terrell Bernard struggled a little bit with that hurry up offense of Seattle.
Yeah, you wonder if some of that is like the Bills were trying to like not give up a big play there, and they've done that at times in this defense. They've tried to avoid giving up the big play, and they did a pretty good job of that, in this game. So look, as Bobby Babbage said during his presser, and even McDermott said during his presser today, not presser, but more of an interview, was like, look, at times offenses are going to make plays, right? And like, he didn't necessarily say like we have a bend but don't break mentality, but it just turned out that way, where we've been able to kind of limit the damage on some of these times where offenses have gotten a little bit of a juice going, and they have been able to prevent them from scoring TDs. So that's been kind of nice. So I will say that they did a good job in limiting the damage for sure.
All right. Final thoughts here. Bills Mafia was outstanding. I didn't really notice them until Cooper caught his first pass, and all I heard was like, Coop. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, this game's in Seattle. What's going on? And Sean McDermott lit up post game talking about the effect that Bills Mafia had. Josh Allen raved about Bills Mafia and the way they were able to travel to Seattle for this game. And Geno Smith even said at some points it felt like they were playing on the road. They weren't playing at Lumen Field. So kudos to Bills Mafia. They always travel well. And it's on to the next one here versus Miami, with a chance to take even more of a stranglehold on the AFC East than we already have next week. Any other final thoughts here, Dave?
I mean, for Geno to come out and say that at a place like Seattle that's known for its home crowd, like, it's just kind of nice, a little bit of vindication for the Bills fans who always have to hear about how Seattle's the loudest place in the NFL and all this BS, like them and Arrowhead. It's like, it is nice to hear from the opponent, the home quarterback, to say that. It's on to Miami. Let's not overlook this Dolphins team, even though they are struggling right now. That's a team that can still do some damage, and we'll have it for you on the pregame.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Always appreciate you again. A lot of what we talked about today, we wouldn't have talked about without you guys in the comment section driving the conversation. So always appreciate you guys. If you could smash that like, helps us with the algorithm. Word of mouth is awesome too. So if you hit that share button, share it out in social media, text a friend, text family, email. Again, just write the link on a piece of paper, carrier pigeon it out, however you want to communicate what we're doing here at Cover One, what we're doing here at the Air Raid Hour. We really would appreciate it. And until next time, thank you guys, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!